Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I am Michelle Helkett, and this is episode 3 of the Central Avenue podcast. It's our attempt to help pull back the curtains on the black box of traditional publishing. For those of you who don't know me, I am the founder and publisher of Central Avenue. We're a press of fiction and poetry distributed to the trade by Simon and Schuster. Today, we'll be talking editing, and I am joined by Molly Winter, an author and editor. And in the next 30 minutes, we'll be talking about the roles of the editor, the process we take here, and how the very important relationship between the editor and author comes together. Molly, it is so nice to have you here. And maybe we could start with you introducing yourself, and maybe you can let us know a little bit about what drew you to the field of editing.
Hello. Yes, it's always fun to talk to you. I know we can talk for hours about anything in the industry. But yes, I've published with you under my pre-marriage and writing name, Molly Ringle, for at least 10 years. So, but then I also have worked as an editor on and off, and more so lately. I started that because I guess I was always one of those kids who was good at spelling and who actually liked the sentence diagramming lessons in school. And some of my subjects, not so good. No good at PE, not very good at history, sometimes math and science, no, but like anything to do with language, I was really drawn to. And I started by being a writer. I thought that made more sense. And later started editing for others too. I've noticed that I never minded the revision process as a writer, even revising my own stuff. And since I was surprised to learn, meet more writers and find that they dread revisions. They really don't like revising in their editing process, and they don't know where to start. And that has never bothered me, which is probably one reason editing is a good fit. And so, yeah, I leveled up in a few years ago, by taking an online course from UW, University of Washington, for an editing certificate, which really got me very familiar with Chicago Manual of Style and a few other style guides, and filled in the corners of the stuff I didn't know. And I've gotten a lot more steady work since then, working with other people's writing. And I love that it keeps me in the publishing world in a different way. It lets me see more sides of it than I saw as a writer alone. It's been good. And thank you for taking a chance on some of my early editing attempts.
Oh my goodness. Oh, it's just been a joy working with you. I think that your willingness to to take editors' suggestions and revisions makes you the great writer that you are. It's the writers that I've met along the way that are hesitant or fight back against the changes that we might suggest. It always makes it a very challenging process. And we can certainly get into that in a few minutes for sure.
Yeah, it depends on the situation. But yeah, I've been a very sensitive, person generally, but writer as well. So I try to be so gentle as an editor and be part of the process of change rather than making them feel like I'm their English teacher who's rapping them on the knuckles and telling them that they did this wrong.
Well, and that kind of brings me to my first question, actually. Like, what do you see as the primary role of the editor in the publishing process?
The primary role, as I see it, is to help make the writer's intended meaning as clear and effective as possible. And I look to fix actual mistakes, of course, like typos, but also to alert the author to any possible misinterpretations or ambiguities that they might not have intended or might not want. And ultimately, they will probably get to choose what stays and what gets changed. But I'm here to help them make the final product as close to their intention and their vision as we can get it. And also, yeah, I think part of the role should be boosting morale, like not making them feel judged, but feel supported.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And
So
I
that's mainly
actually,
clarity.
yeah, I heard that from another editor who
Mm-hmm.
said, yes, this person achieved what they set out to do. So they felt their role was to help the writer achieve what they were originally intended, just like you just said, and not trying to make
Yeah.
them into a different person or a different story, a different writer with a different
Yeah.
voice. And yeah, I love that because I am certainly not an editor. And so I'm so honored to be
I feel
surrounded
like you
by
are.
people. Oh gosh, no,
I mean,
no, I can,
there's so
yeah,
many levels of editor though. You're an
yes,
acquisitions editor, and you're sort of the editor in chief style of editor. I think that
yeah,
probably is part of the confusion in the world. It's like, what does it even mean to be an editor?
yeah.
Because there are so many levels. And right, I am not at all an editor in chief who could put together a whole magazine or keep everyone
Well,
running on their assignments.
I think that,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that goes really well into talking about how we handle it at Central Avenue. So
Hmm.
when we get submissions, yes, I do look through the pitch that comes from the agent or the poet.
Hmm.
And what I see, what I think I'm good at is on the acquisition side. So I look
Yeah.
at the business of the book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's what you know. Yeah.
I hate to say that it's, from the financials or a brand or marketing or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's we're doing this to help the book succeed in the world. And
Hmm.
so I think that is what I can contribute to the process is looking at the whole package
Yeah.
of the author and the book. Now, that package might look really great. And it might be all bundled up in this beautiful, pretty paper that the agent wraps it up in and compares it to, all the greatest selling books in the world. So, what I then do, if I think that package looks great, is I'll send it on to, we have a poetry and a fiction editor, and I will send it
Hmm.
to one of them to take a look at. Um, if they come back with it and say, "Yeah, we think this looks great," they've done a more involved read, then we'll take that on. And as you know, Molly, we set out a production schedule, and we start
Yeah.
assigning different books to different editors. And
Hmm.
the first process that we go through is that developmental read, where we read something and we start suggesting, major changes, not so major changes
Right.
that might affect plot, character, that kind of thing, those sort of big things. And then the author has a chance to take that feedback and make some changes. And then it goes to another editor for the copywriting or copy editing stage. Once that
Yeah, good.
is
It should
done,
go from big to small
yeah,
in terms of the
yeah, for
change
sure.
size. Yes,
Yeah,
ideally.
yeah. And then after that, we get into the very small, which is the proofreading stage,
Yep. Final
which
stage.
is done by yet another editor. So there are many different people that
Possibly
have their
so. Yeah.
fingers, yeah, in the pie for
Well,
sure.
it's
In the
good, but yeah, to see different eyes on it because there's always something that one of us will miss and then somebody else will catch that. Oh
yes,
my gosh, I can't believe I didn't see that. So
yes.
to have 3 or 4 people look at it is a good idea.
And what I love during that developmental stage too is when we all get together, we've read something and we say, okay, well, what worked for us and what didn't work for us.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating that often it's the same things. We'll all find that same little thing
Hmm.
that was like, ooh, maybe we need to change that one thing or that aspect.
That's a
So
good
I think
sign.
that's
Yeah, if everyone
yeah,
agrees, that's
yeah.
a sign that it's worth looking at.
So then it
Yes.
comes back to, okay, well, we got to go back to the writer with some changes. Um, how do you
Hmm.
find it's best to establish that collaborative relationship with them? Because I always have a bit of a hard time when I'm crafting that email that says,
Hmm.
okay, I feel like I'm like on tenterhooks saying, okay, here's what we think needs to
Yeah.
change. How do you broach that?
Well, in writing one of those emails, yeah, I think they say this for all kinds of management, right? Like you sort of do the sandwich, the structure of an email where you have praise at the beginning and end, and then the constructive criticism in the middle, so that they really do feel encouraged and that you feel like they feel like you are supporting them on this and not just going, okay, here is a list of problems. Here's your
Right.
assignment. You're giving them
Yeah.
homework. It's not like that. I don't want them to feel like that. And again, I've been on the writing end of that, so I know how it feels. So I try to
Yeah.
give them a lot of encouragement along the way too. Even before I'm done, sometimes I guess usually not with Central Avenue's books because I figure you're already in contact with the author. But if it's just me as a freelancer, I'll often drop a word to them after a few days or a week, just in the process to say it's going fine and I'm really enjoying the aspect X. And if I have any follow-up questions at that point that have already occurred to me, I'll ask them just so they know that it hasn't disappeared into a void and they won't know what to expect.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of
they do
hurry up and
eventually
wait.
have to have that.
Yeah. There's a lot of hurry up and wait in this industry for sure.
I need to remember to, one thing I always need to remember to do more often is to set out the expectations a little better at the beginning, I think, because sometimes they don't know how long it's going to take. Or the one thing I need to remember to say, usually doesn't come up, but when it does, is that once we have started doing edits, the author needs to put down the pencil. No more edits on their side until we have come back, because there have been just rarely been a time or two when they will kind of pop in when I'm in the middle of editing their book and say, okay, I had to redo those first 3 chapters. They were bothering me. So here's the new version. And I'm like, I just proofread all of that. We could put that in, but now it's complicated. So I need to remind, that's on me to remind them to, you have to leave it alone at this point.
Do you
just
find that,
space, please?
do you find that most writers have a fairly thick skin? Or, I mean, we're making them sound like they're these precious little bubbles that, oh my gosh, they can't come into contact with anything.
I think I'm the most precious. Yeah. So I'm putting it as, if I'm the norm and I treat everyone like that, then they'll be all right. But now I've occasionally even had people say like, don't sugarcoat it for me. Tell me exactly what's wrong with it. I want to know. And I mean, I'm still going to say it nicely, but it's, it's, I guess sometimes they can seem like it's difficult to take and it's going to be so much work. And I try to reassure them, again, I've been there as a writer, and usually if you sit with those ideas for just a couple days, like don't try to do anything about it for a couple days if the schedule allows. Just think about it, think about the changes, because usually you come around to not only accepting it, but getting great new ideas from this feedback. And then you go, oh, I know what I can do. And then you start talking to your editor and going, okay, what if I change it like this? And then you have a great conversation about it and it gets fixed up even better. So basically I try to reassure them that it usually doesn't take as much revision as they're worried it's going to take. It doesn't take as much time as they're worried it's going to take. And if they think about it for a couple days, they're probably going to get excited about it and not actually feel like this is demoralizing and way too much work and just the worst thing that I've ever heard. So, but if after those couple days, they still think this change does not fit the book I want, then they should come and say that. And we should have that talk and see what else we can do. And that's something I sometimes wish I've done in the past too, as an author, is not just said, okay, every change you want, we'll do it. There's probably a couple times that I'm like, I don't know if I should have done that one.
Right.
You don't actually have to roll over for every change.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think, often as, the packager of the book, that's me, or the editor of the book, we have these ideas. And a lot of times we're trying to meet expectations commercially or from the zeitgeist. So we're trying to adhere to what the current beliefs are about certain things, or commercial sort of expectations around the genre. For example, writing a happily ever after, or tying things up in a nice little bow, like that kind of thing.
For romance, you have to.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find interesting from an editing point of view is trying to meet those expectations that we are exposed to, from a social sort of point of view. So, for example, in today's language and zeitgeist, for lack of a better word, there are certain things that we just don't do anymore. Like, I'm the mother of a couple of, Gen Z kids. And, in my day, we didn't wear certain clothes because it didn't match our body type, or and I'm saying this in air quotes, or
what will people think?
It wasn't appropriate or that kind of thing. Kids today are much more free and don't care about those things. They wear the fashion they want to wear. They're not dressing for a certain body type or whatever. And I find when we're working on books that sometimes we get
Hmm.
caught up in these kind of old-fashioned ideas,
Yeah, yeah,
and they kind of creep into the writing, and then it's like, oh, you know what, that's not relevant anymore. We don't talk like that.
yeah,
And
totally.
so it's really important to sort of match that so that it doesn't feel dated. Um,
Hmm.
one of the
And those go
challenges that
so fast. They
yes,
those
they
trends can change really fast. I swear it's
yes,
happened to be like from the when I started writing a book to when it was published. Like I swear to you, that was okay 4 years ago.
yeah, yeah,
Now it's not.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know, but
We
yeah.
we had a book that we published. It was a YA book, and it referenced some uh, older rappers and hip hop artists. And so the current protagonist in current day, 17-year-old,
Hmm.
was, he mentioned some of his people that he really enjoys, and so he's mentioning people like Tupac or
Yeah.
older hip hop artists. And one of the things that came back was, why would a 17-year-old look up to them? Why are they not looking up to someone more current? And they thought that it made the
Yeah.
book sound kind of like not very relevant. And I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, but editorially speaking, and from a publishing house kind of perspective, we did not want to reference current
A flash in the
artists,
pan. Yeah.
either flashes in the
Yeah.
pan, or if they next month become problematic for some reason.
Yeah,
Like, wouldn't it
exactly.
have been awful
Right.
if we
Oh,
had published a book where the protagonist loved R. Kelly?
I know,
Like,
exactly. You don't know. There's, I mean, yeah,
yeah,
I don't want to name
yeah,
up too many celebrities, but seriously, I would have been shocked if you go back 10 or 15 years to me then and said, so here's a couple celebrities you will no longer like. I'd have been like,
yeah,
huh?
yeah,
What
yeah,
did they do?
yeah.
But now I know it's true.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
from an editorial point of view, we picked people that we thought were quote unquote safe,
That's
just because
fair.
it
That's a good
was,
way to think about it. It's
yeah,
not
it
just
was,
dating it, it's, yeah.
no, it was, and you know what? Like, kids today listen to music from the 80s and the 70s, so it's not unrealistic
Yeah.
that,
And you
young
could make
people
one
wouldn't keep up.
note that
Yeah,
like
yeah,
my mom or my uncle or somebody got me onto this old stuff and it's pretty good or
yeah,
something like that. And
yeah,
then you're done. That's easy.
exactly.
You explained it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What are some other common challenges that maybe you've encountered along the way?
With just anything in editing at all.
Yeah, whether it's
Well,
content or dealing with
yeah,
people.
on the very technical side, um, it's not uncommon to find that authors have trouble using track changes in Word. Microsoft Word's track changes is how I and nearly every editor will mark up a Word document. It's not the best technique in the world. It's just the kind of the best existing one, I guess.
Right.
And sometimes the author will say beforehand, "Sure, however you want to do it is fine." But it turns out they've actually never really used track changes. So when the file comes back with all my edits, they don't know how to navigate it or how best to view it or accept or reject changes. They're trying to like individually fix each one. And I'm going, no, you don't have to do it like that. I do have a
Right.
short set of tech instructions for using track changes that I therefore send to clients along with the edits. But I think even with that, it can be confusing if you just don't have much experience with all the little tricks of Word.
I
That's one
agree.
very technical thing. I think it's still so much faster than the old days with our red pens and paper.
Yeah.
I'm not old enough to actually have been editing like that. But in the editing course, we did learn how to make all the little marks that they used to make just in case we ever have to make those. But I
Ah.
yeah, I had to do that for an assignment. Red pen marks on paper and scan them.
Oh gosh, gosh. I do remember that
Yeah.
from probably 10 years ago. And I think it was written into the contract that something about that I will send back this and the author will send back the pages marked up in red pen. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm
Like,
so
no,
glad
wait,
it's,
let's I gotta update
yeah,
that clause. Yeah,
yeah,
no one knows how to do that.
exactly. Yeah,
That would be such a huge amount of time.
yeah.
And then the
Have,
random challenge is that I feel like I don't know I'm never sure I'm charging the right amount. That is, I have rates,
hmm,
but like some people have said, this is too low. This isn't enough for all the work you're doing. And then other
hmm,
people have said, for the same rates, this is much too high for my budget and for most writers I know. And
Uh,
I don't know. It's maybe that means the rates are actually about right since they're right in the middle of those bids.
yeah,
But
that's,
it's odd as a freelancer to just have to say that for yourself. And go, well, here you sort of throw a number out there. Is that right? I don't want to undercut my colleagues, but I don't want to just overstate anything either. So it's hard to know. It is a little bit
yeah.
isolating as a freelancer.
Well, there
Yeah.
should be some sort of rate card because
I
that's
know.
true. Mind you, not editors are all the same. So,
No,
you could be charging
there's a range.
a penny a word for proofreading, let's say, and
Yeah.
one proofreader just doesn't do the same job as the other proofreader. So,
Yeah.
I, I just for the listeners, editing is by far the most expensive part of creating a book.
I would think, especially for a
Um,
novel where there's
yeah,
80,000 or so words, it's just going to
yeah.
take a long time. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It
So
takes
that
a
is
long
true.
time. It's expensive. So
Yeah.
it's where most of the investment goes in. And I always say that fiction's expensive. It's not just expensive from editing, but from marketing and all that kind of thing as well. But yeah.
There's so many
Um,
low costs. Yeah, that's interesting to know. I
oh,
wasn't sure it was actually the most expensive, but yeah. As my
yeah.
husband says with any kind of job that applies here, like what is he say? Good, fast, or cheap? Pick any two. It's like,
Yes.
yeah,
Very well said.
yeah.
Very well said. Yeah.
Well, I can do it
Um,
cheaper. It won't be as good.
Well, speaking of cheap, we could load it all into Chat GPT and see what it comes out with. I had the
True. Yeah.
I was at something recently where different people were giving little speeches, and one fellow got up and gave this great, very
Hmm.
original, interesting little talk. And the next person got up, and I swear that they had just gone to Chat GPT and typed in some sort of prompt
It
and
was
then read what Chat GPT gave them.
just has that
So,
generic feel. Yeah,
formulaic
it's
and words
I
that
think I saw
nobody
a book
uses.
review like that recently that like at first I was like, oh, what a lovely wait a sec. This is
Yeah.
totally non-specific.
Yes. Yeah.
Hang on. I think they just asked an AI to write
Do
this.
you, do you
Yeah.
think that the role of editors will change? I mean, we talked a little bit about how it's
Mhm.
changed, moving from red pen and paper to
Yeah.
electronic. Um, what do you think about the whole? Do you have any comments on a chat, like generative AI or anything like that?
Yeah, I haven't played with ChatGPT to actually be an editor or anything. I've noticed that the few times I've messed with it, the content it puts out is oddly pretty well good in terms of grammar and spelling. It's really not bad. It's the content is bland. It's not
Hmm.
interesting reading at all, but like the grammar is fine, weirdly enough. So I'm not sure how that
Yeah.
happened, but
Yeah.
um it must have I think all it can do is average out what's already out there. So it must have averaged out what is mostly proper writing. And that's how it got that. I know that
Yeah.
Microsoft Word's editor function, which is what used to be called spelling and grammar check, is terrible at its job.
Mm,
So I would not recommend that anyone trust that. I've run it sometimes. It does sometimes, catch an actual spelling error that I missed, but nearly half the things it suggests for especially the grammar replacements, don't even make sense. It just somehow
no.
parsed it wrong and it gives a suggestion that does not make any sense. So I would not recommend trusting that. In terms of that function, we human editors are not being replaced anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I also haven't played with, I think it's Grammarly or other similar software. I don't know how well those work. They might work, but
Yeah.
my suspicion is AI would still have a long way to go before it could really grasp all the human nuance that goes into any average
Hmm.
paragraph of writing, let alone a whole book and all its continuity. So
Hmm.
I don't know. There's two sides to it. There's all these tech tricks that we have that make it go so much quicker, and I love
Hmm.
some of those and I use them all the time. But there honestly it would take hours to do some of these things by hand, and you could do it in seconds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
search and
Yeah.
replace. Yeah,
Yeah. I
those are great.
think I think AI, the where it is right now, these large language models are kind of at the same place that Photoshop was, like 15 years ago,
Hmm.
like or 20 years
Oh,
ago that was
interesting.
terrible. um,
You can
but
tell. Yeah.
yes, you can tell basically.
Yeah.
But now, there is generative AI built into a lot of these apps. It's built into Photoshop. So you can just
Hmm.
say, if you have a picture, you can just say, oh, take out that man that's in behind, my daughter that I just took a picture of, and it'll do it
Yeah.
for you. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think these things are definitely coming. I, I,
Yeah. I think
we
so.
have a policy here that we're not going to use AI in the editing process or in the cover generation or
Hopefully, in
or
the
anything
writing.
like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, or
Yeah.
in the right or any of that.
Yeah.
We're going to use humans, but
Yeah.
um, I think that there will come a time when it is quite good, and that
Hmm.
will
I think so.
cause problems, especially on the more simple things like proofreading.
Yeah.
But
And honestly,
for
that's,
the
I think
yeah,
that's okay. It's not like it's
yeah,
crucial to my life that I proofread. It's not the only thing I can
yeah,
ever do. But
yeah, exactly.
it's,
I think
yeah, until then.
yeah,
Yeah.
the more advanced editing, where like you say, we add the human nuance.
Hmm.
I don't see it at least in the next little while, having a space. The other issue is that anything you're uploading into those models is
Mm.
now part of their model, like it's part of that
Right.
software. And so
Yeah.
for us, I wouldn't want to put an 80,000 word original novel in there for fear that it's going to get leaked out and get
Hmm.
published in some other way. So
Good
um,
point.
yeah,
That's
there's
funny.
like a
That
whole
used to be such a
copyright thing.
concern. Everyone used to be
Mhm.
so worried about that with sharing any work online that someone else was going to steal their novel and publish
Yeah.
it themselves. And I always went, if it were that easy to publish a novel and make it successful, I would already have done it.
Yeah.
But now it kind of is getting easy. I've got another friend who works in the publishing world and sort of the print and ebook side of things, and it's become a huge issue that AI generated stuff is being submitted en masse to Amazon
Oh,
publishing and things, and they've got to start, like, it's now part of his job to look for it and flag it, and it's like
oh,
thousands of titles a month that are being like, here, let's publish this. They're being submitted, and
yeah.
this is probably AI. This is probably AI. This is probably like this. Become your job is to just to flag
Oh,
garbage stuff that has come in,
yeah.
and I don't understand why that would be anyone's idea of trying to make money. As you and I know, trying to,
Yeah.
like, publishing a book isn't how you make a lot of money.
No.
That's
No.
not.
No.
Don't
No,
do
we don't
that.
do
Do
it for the
use
money, do we?
you have your AI play the stock market or
Yeah.
something, but
Yeah.
don't. Why publish garbage books and hope that somebody's going to buy it and
I
take
don't
your
know.
royalties? You're not going to make anything on that.
Yeah.
It's just causing everyone a lot of work, and it's not getting you
Unless
anywhere.
it's another
Yeah.
AI buying the garbage AI book. Ooh,
Yeah,
it's like
who's
that movie
buying
Her.
this?
Yeah.
It's just like copies and copies and copies. I don't know, but it does seem, and maybe that's partly why. I'd be curious if you'd found this too, that it's harder to get any book noticed now, and I'm wondering if it's because there's a flood of new titles, half of which are apparently not even written by humans, just showing up
Yeah.
all over, mostly like Amazon. I don't know that
Yeah.
big sites like that are doing as much to curb it. I imagine the smaller, obviously, an independent bookstore knows what they're ordering, but
Hmm.
something like Amazon, just like,
Yeah. It's back in the first early days when you first were working with me,
yeah,
at Central Avenue, and we didn't have traditional distribution, it was near impossible to get discovered, even back then,
hmm,
12 years ago. Um,
yeah.
Now
And
it's a
yet it felt
lot.
like with new books, it still seemed like they made a bit more of a splash. Like there just weren't as many new
Yeah,
books in this category every single
yeah,
day on Amazon.
that's
And now
true.
it's, I don't
Yeah,
know how you find
yeah.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny. I think I'm kind of out of touch now with the self-publishing
yeah,
realm, because there that was sort of our main competitor before, because we were also basically self-publishing. Um,
yeah.
yeah, when you have access to a distributor, it does make things a little bit easier, because now there's a whole team of people
Oh,
out there
for
selling
sure.
selling the book, and the ebook
Yeah,
becomes less of a factor in the success of it. But yeah, definitely
Yeah.
in the early days when that's all we were relying on, or for the most part, what we were relying on, that was really difficult for sure. For sure.
Well, that is
Um,
true. It was big.
well, I don't want to end this on a downer note about AI and challenges
Yeah.
with writers and all that, but so maybe you
Yeah.
could share like a memorable or a rewarding experience.
Right. Yeah. The one that comes to mind is that, or with one of the novelists I've worked with, there was one of those times when there was a scene I suggested changing that we had a discussion about, like just for more nuance on a sensitive topic. And I wasn't totally sure, but I thought it was best this way. And she did make those changes. And then when the book came out months later, someone wrote a positive review that praised the handling of that exact topic. And the author emailed it to me and told me, like, you got me this review. And I was like, phew. Honestly, my
Oh,
reaction is mostly huge relief at those times. You don't know for certain that your changes will be well received by readers. There's always a
yeah.
risk, and you don't want to mess it up for the author. But so when it does happen like that, you're like, oh, thank goodness. That is very
Oh,
rewarding.
that's
Yeah, and,
awesome.
and I thought, no, you got that review for yourself. You wrote the whole book, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really glad that they did like that specific thing. That is
Yeah.
good to know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a control version of the book where, okay, I'm going to release it without my suggestions. And then also over here, we're going to release it with my suggestions in a parallel
Right.
universe. I
Yeah.
don't know which way is for sure going to be better.
Yeah. And there'll
But
always be the what if or I should have or whatever.
yeah, like,
So
did I
yeah,
guide
there
them right?
comes,
I'm just one person.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, I know. And the same thing happens at big houses too. There's only
Yeah.
so many people that are working on the book and they're doing what they think is best.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's the process though, and that's why we keep coming back to it, right? Yeah.
I think Central Labs books are very well put together from I've I read plenty of Big Five as well and bigger things.
Uh,
I think we edit even better than these sometimes.
uh,
So
well,
yeah.
that's
Mark me
very
up.
kind of you to say, but I also think they've come a long way since the beginning because back in the day when
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't have the money to hire editors, I was trying to do it myself and made tons and tons of mistakes. And yeah, so I'm
We don't
glad
know
when
what we
that,
don't know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
When I took the editing course, I had been editing people before that. And then realized when I took the course, I'm like, there's all of these things I either wasn't marking at all or marking wrong or
yeah,
could have been doing differently. But now I
yeah,
know what I didn't know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But we grow and
That's
we
good.
learn and we move on.
Yep.
And that's where we are now. I'm sure 10 years we'll look back at this point and say, oh, if I'd only done X or Y. So yeah,
That's the point though. Is yeah, always keep learning. And
yeah.
that's that's the kind of
Well,
older person I want to be as I'm keep aging. Just keep learning.
e- exactly. Well, that sounds like an awesome place to end this, Molly. Thank you so much
Yes,
for
thank you.
joining me. This has been super fun. I love speaking
Mhm.
with you. You're a huge asset to Central Avenue and to any author that you're also working
Oh,
with. So, yeah, thank you for
thank
sharing some
you.
time with me.
I think everyone's very lucky if they get published by Central Avenue. So I'm happy to work with the team. It's always a good experience.
All right. Well, thanks, Molly. And to all of you listening out there, we hope to be back with another podcast in another month or so. So stay tuned to our socials and our newsletter, and we'll let you know what's coming up. Thanks and have a great one.